My name is Alexander Parker, and I never imagined that coming home from the hospital a day early would shatter the very foundation of my life. For the past 2 weeks, I'd been recovering in a hospital after a serious accident. A fall from a ladder had left me with a broken leg, and the doctors insisted I stay for at least 10 days. But my recovery had been faster than expected, and now, on the 9th day, they told me I could go home. I was relieved. The thought of returning to the comfort of my own home, of seeing Cassandra, my wife, gave me a fleeting sense of happiness. But deep down, a small, nagging doubt kept creeping in, something I had always ignored. I decided not to inform anyone of my early discharge. I wanted it to be a surprise, a small moment of joy to break the monotony of my hospital stay. I took a taxi home, my mind wandering between relief and curiosity. What would Cassandra say when she saw me? Would she be genuinely happy, or indifferent as she had seemed lately? As the taxi pulled up to my house, a strange stillness hung in the air. The front door was closed, yet light flickered through the blinds. My heart raced with anticipation as I stepped out. I fumbled with my keys, trying to make no noise, hoping to catch her off guard. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. Laughter, not the familiar, warm laughter I had known, but a soft, almost mischievous chuckle. 2 voices. One belongs to my wife and another a man's. My chest tightened. My pulse quickened. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the sounds. I stayed by the door, unwilling to move, unwilling to confront the reality forming before me. Slowly, I edged toward the living room, careful to remain unseen. The dim light cast shadows across the room, but there was no mistaking the scene before me. Cassandra was sitting on the couch, relaxed and laughing, with a man I had never seen before. Their closeness, the way they looked at each other, it spoke volumes without a single word being uttered. For a moment, I thought I must be dreaming. Perhaps the accident had left me hallucinating, or maybe I had dozed off in the taxi, and this was a fevered vision. But the clarity of the voices, the distinct movements, left no room for doubt. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay calm. My first instinct was to storm in, shout, demand answers, and confront them head-on. But something inside me, a part of me that had learned patience and strategy over the years, stopped me. This was not a moment for rash decisions. This was a moment to observe, to understand, to plan. I quietly stepped back toward the kitchen, needing space to breathe. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: rage, heartbreak, disbelief, and a bitter sense of betrayal. Questions bombarded me. How long has this been going on? Was my marriage nothing more than a facade? Did she even care about me at all? Cassandra's laughter continued, light and carefree, as if the last few weeks had been an invisible wall between us, unnoticed by her. And yet I realized I had known something was off. The small things, the little secrets, the moments she disappeared for hours, the phone calls she quickly ended when I approached. They all painted a picture I had refused to see. I sat silently, leaning against the counter, processing every detail. The man's presence, his tone, the ease with which they interacted, it all screamed familiarity, intimacy. My mind catalogued everything. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was deliberate, and then a strange clarity came over me. My initial anger began to transform. I knew that confronting her now, in a rage, would only satisfy a momentary urge. What I wanted, what I needed, was to ensure she felt the weight of this betrayal in a way that would never be forgotten. This was no longer just personal heartbreak. It was a revelation, a story of deception that needed an ending of my own design. I took a deep breath, letting the silence of the house fill me. Every detail, every laugh, every subtle movement was being stored in my mind. I would not act impulsively. I would wait. I would watch. And when the time came, she would see just how wrong she had been. And I would emerge not as a victim, but as someone in complete control. That night, as I sat in the quiet kitchen, The world outside my window oblivious to the storm brewing inside. I understood one immutable truth. Betrayal could be hidden. Deception could be masked, but every secret eventually leaves a trail. And I intended to follow it, step by calculated step. That evening ended not with confrontation, but with observation. I retreated to the guest room, my mind racing, heart heavy yet resolute. This was just the beginning. Cassandra and her lover had no idea what lay ahead, and I promised myself no matter what, that I would not only reclaim my dignity, but ensure that the truth of this betrayal would be revealed in the most unforgettable way possible. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. My leg ached, but the pain was nothing compared to the storm raging inside me. Cassandra and her lover had no idea I had seen everything the night before. My mind replayed the scene over and over, every laugh, every subtle touch, every word. Jason Miller, that was the name of the man who dared to sit on my couch in my home with my wife. I moved carefully, testing my strength as I exited the guest room. My body was fragile, my leg not fully healed, but my resolve was ironclad. I couldn't rush into anything. I needed a plan. Confrontation in anger would be useless. It would satisfy the moment, yes, but it would give her no real consequence. No, I had to think bigger. I had to make sure she understood the depth of her betrayal. I started with the basics, evidence. My phone was ready, camera and video recording apps open. I had to be discreet but meticulous. Every call, every hidden message, every suspicious action over the past weeks suddenly made sense. I recalled the missed calls she tried to hide, the late-night texts she claimed were work-related, the little evasions that now screamed deception. By mid-morning I was observing her from a distance. I didn't make my presence known. I watched as she went about her routine with a strange casualness, pretending nothing had changed. But in my mind, the image of her and Jason laughing on my couch was seared permanently. I felt a surge of anger, yes, but also a cold clarity. This was not just about hurt feelings. This was about justice, about exposing the truth in a way that couldn't be ignored. I called my best friend Ethan Brooks to talk. Ethan had always been my confidant, the one person I could trust completely. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I need advice. Something serious is happening at home. I need to act smart, not impulsive." Ethan listened quietly, then responded, "Alex, take a step back. Watch record collect. Don't confront yet. Make sure every detail counts. You can't undo a mistake, but you can control the fallout." His words only strengthened my resolve. Ethan didn't know all the details, and I didn't tell him everything. But he knew enough to understand the gravity of the situation. I spent the day moving silently through the house, gathering clues without revealing myself. Phone records, emails, and subtle cues, everything was being catalogued. Cassandra acted completely normal, but every gesture, every phone vibration, every nervous glance told a story that she thought I was too weak to notice. But I wasn't weak. I'd been observing, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment. By evening, I had formulated the first stage of my plan. I would not confront her tonight. Instead, I would let her believe that her actions were safe. That sense of security would be her downfall. Meanwhile, I discreetly reached out to Samantha Reed, a trusted colleague who had previously assisted me in sensitive matters. She would help me gather the evidence I needed for a decisive move. As night fell, Cassandra and Jason continued their evening, oblivious to the storm brewing just a few rooms away. I remained hidden, recording and noting every detail. My emotions were a mix of fury and cold calculation. This wasn't just betrayal, it was audacity, a challenge to my life, my dignity, and my authority. And in that quiet house, I realized something else. Revenge is not about immediate gratification. Revenge is about precision, timing, and leaving a lasting impression. Cassandra and Jason might have believed they were untouchable, that I was a broken man after my accident, that I would never see through their deceit. But I had seen, I had understood, and soon they would learn that nothing, not even betrayal, could escape accountability. That night, as I lay in the guest room, I made a silent vow I would not only reclaim what was mine, my dignity, my home, my life, but I would ensure that Cassandra and Jason would never forget the consequences of their choices. The real game had begun, and unlike them, I wasn't reckless. I was patient, observant, and fully in control. The first move had been made. Now it was a matter of waiting for the right moment to strike. The following morning, I woke with a sense of determination. My legs still ached, but it felt insignificant compared to the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. Cassandra was downstairs, moving with casual ease, as if nothing had happened. Jason Miller, that audacious intruder, was also there, pretending to belong. Every laugh, every whispered word between them felt like a personal challenge. I poured myself a cup of coffee, careful not to draw attention. I had learned early on that subtlety would serve me far better than confrontation. I needed to observe, gather more evidence, and understand the depth of their betrayal. I remembered Ethan's words, "Control the situation. Don't let them think they're safe." I started my morning by checking the security cameras I had installed months ago, something Cassandra had complained about, but I had insisted on keeping for our protection. The footage was gold. Every secret entry, every suspicious movement, everything I had suspected was documented there. Jason's presence in my home was not new. He had been sneaking around for weeks, carefully timing visits when I was preoccupied. Cassandra's reactions were telling too. I could see the nervous flicker in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. I smiled inwardly. She had underestimated me, as most people did, but now I was fully aware, fully prepared, and fully in control. Later that day, I received a text from Samantha Reed, my trusted colleague, confirming that she had discreetly started collecting additional evidence. She would track phone records, emails, and any digital footprint left by Jason. It was perfect. I had allies, I had proof, and I had patience. Around noon, Cassandra approached me, seemingly innocent. "Alexander," she said softly, "are you feeling okay? You've been quiet lately." I met her gaze calmly, hiding the whirlwind inside me. "I'm fine," I replied evenly. "Just thinking." Her smile faltered slightly. I caught it. She wasn't used to me being composed, unshaken, and quiet. For the first time, I noticed the subtle fear creeping into her posture. She thought she had control. She thought I was oblivious. She was wrong. I decided to drop a subtle hint, just enough to unsettle her without revealing my full hand. "It's interesting," I said casually, "how some people think they can be invisible, yet leave traces everywhere they go. Funny how life has a way of showing the truth, isn't it?" Cassandra paused, pretending to sip her coffee, but her hands trembled slightly. I could see Jason's face pale a bit in the background. He hadn't expected any of this. For the first time, they realized that I wasn't blind. I had seen, I had noticed, and I had begun my strategy. The rest of the day passed with subtle maneuvers. I stayed calm, polite, and outwardly composed, but inwardly I was calculating every possible move. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered word between Cassandra and Jason was being mentally catalogued. That evening, I received a message from Ethan. "Good. Keep watching. Patience is key. They'll slip, and when they do, make sure you're ready." It was reassuring. I wasn't alone in this. I had a plan, and I had allies. Cassandra and Jason believed they were untouchable, but the truth was that I was just warming up. The pieces were moving into place. Before going to bed, I walked through the living room once more, silent and observing. Cassandra and Jason were talking quietly, unaware that I had followed them. I let a faint smirk cross my face. They had assumed their secret was safe, that I was incapacitated, weak and unsuspecting. But the real twist, the part they would never see coming, was still ahead. I lay in the guest room that night, thinking through every detail. My strategy was clear: gather evidence, maintain composure, and strike at the perfect moment. Cassandra and Jason had underestimated me. They had believed they were clever, but cleverness without foresight is useless, and as sleep finally took me, a single thought repeated in my mind: they'll regret every choice they made the moment I decide it's time. The following morning, I woke with a sense of determination. My legs still ached, but it felt insignificant compared to the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. Cassandra was downstairs, moving with casual ease, as if nothing had happened. Jason Miller, that audacious intruder, was also there, pretending to belong. Every laugh, every whispered word between them felt like a personal challenge. I poured myself a cup of coffee, careful not to draw attention. I had learned early on that subtlety would serve me far better than confrontation. I needed to observe, gather more evidence, and understand the depth of their betrayal. I remembered Ethan's words: control the situation. Don't let them think they're safe. I started my morning by checking the security cameras I had installed months ago, something Cassandra had complained about, but I had insisted on keeping for our protection. The footage was gold. Every secret entry, every suspicious movement, everything I had suspected was documented there. Jason's presence in my home was not new. He had been sneaking around for weeks, carefully timing visits when I was preoccupied. Cassandra's reactions were telling too. I could see the nervous flicker in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. I smiled inwardly. She had underestimated me, as most people did, but now I was fully aware, fully prepared, and fully in control. Later that day, I received a text from Samantha Reed, my trusted colleague, confirming that she had discreetly started collecting additional evidence. She would track phone records, emails, and any digital footprint left by Jason. It was perfect. I had allies, I had proof, and I had patience. Around noon, Cassandra approached me, seemingly innocent. "Alexander," she said softly, "are you feeling okay? You've been quiet lately." I met her gaze calmly, hiding the whirlwind inside me. "I'm fine," I replied evenly. "Just thinking." Her smile faltered slightly. I caught it. She wasn't used to me being composed, unshaken, and quiet. For the first time, I noticed the subtle fear creeping into her posture. She thought she had control. She thought I was oblivious. She was wrong. I decided to drop a subtle hint, just enough to unsettle her without revealing my full hand. "It's interesting," I said casually, "how some people think they can be invisible, yet leave traces everywhere they go. Funny how life has a way of showing the truth, isn't it?" Cassandra paused, pretending to sip her coffee, but her hands trembled slightly. I could see Jason's face pale a bit in the background. He hadn't expected any of this. For the first time, they realized that I wasn't blind. I had seen, I had noticed, and I had begun my strategy. The rest of the day passed with subtle maneuvers. I stayed calm, polite, and outwardly composed, but inwardly I was calculating every possible move. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered word between Cassandra and Jason was being mentally catalogued. That evening, I received a message from Ethan. "Good. Keep watching. Patience is key. They'll slip, and when they do, make sure you're ready." It was reassuring. I wasn't alone in this. I had a plan, and I had allies. Cassandra and Jason believed they were untouchable, but the truth was that I was just warming up. The pieces were moving into place. Before going to bed, I walked through the living room once more, silent and observing. Cassandra and Jason were talking quietly, unaware that I had followed them. I let a faint smirk cross my face. They had assumed their secret was safe, that I was incapacitated, weak and unsuspecting. But the real twist, the part they would never see coming, was still ahead. I lay in the guest room that night, thinking through every detail. My strategy was clear: gather evidence, maintain composure, and strike at the perfect moment. Cassandra and Jason had underestimated me. They had believed they were clever, but cleverness without foresight is useless, and as sleep finally took me, a single thought repeated in my mind. They'll regret every choice they made the moment I decide it's time. The following morning, I woke before sunrise again. My body was still sore from the accident, but my mind was sharper than ever. The first stage of my plan was simple: make Cassandra and Jason feel the first ripple of their recklessness without revealing my full hand. I spent hours going through messages, photos, and subtle details collected over the past days. Every interaction they had, every careless comment, every hidden phone call, they were breadcrumbs leading to the truth. I compiled everything meticulously. This was not just revenge. It was a demonstration of control, a lesson in the consequences of betrayal. By noon, I made my move. I had scheduled a video call with a high-profile business partner whom Jason and Cassandra had no idea I was in contact with. I let it ring, knowing they would overhear. As expected, Cassandra paused in the kitchen, her movements tense. Jason glanced at her nervously, sensing something off. "Alexander, can I take this call in the study?" I asked casually. My tone was light, almost innocent, but the underlying intent was clear. I wanted them to hear, to realize I was not blind. I left them with that uneasy tension lingering. The sound of my voice on the phone, confidently conducting business, subtly reminded them of the life they had tried to belittle. I could hear the faint whispers behind the study door. They were observing, calculating, unsure of what I knew. Perfect. Later, while preparing a simple dinner, I let slip a comment about surveillance cameras. "You know," I said casually, "sometimes people think they're unseen, but the truth always shows itself." Cassandra's hand trembled as she chopped vegetables. Jason's eyes widened slightly. That small reaction was exactly what I wanted, a hint of doubt, a seed of fear. They were beginning to understand that I was no longer a passive participant in their deceit. By evening, I had sent discreet messages to Samantha Reed, asking her to compile everything digitally. I wanted a clear, undeniable record of their actions, something that would leave them with no excuses. The plan was beginning to take shape: observation, evidence, subtle confrontation, and eventual revelation. I spent the night reviewing every detail, plotting my next moves with precision. Cassandra and Jason remained unaware that their home, their interactions, even their whispers, were under scrutiny. They thought the house belonged to them, that I was incapacitated and helpless. But the real game had already started. As I lay in the guest room, I thought about the future. Each day would bring new opportunities, small actions, subtle hints, psychological pressure. Every misstep they made would be recorded, every secret catalogued, until the moment came when they could no longer escape the truth. And deep inside, I knew something crucial. Revenge was not just about exposing them. It was about reclaiming my dignity, restoring the balance that had been shattered by betrayal. Cassandra and Jason had underestimated me, and that mistake would be their undoing. Tonight, as I closed my eyes, I made a silent vow. Every laugh, every glance, every attempt to deceive me would become part of the evidence that would eventually topple their carefully constructed illusion. They believed they were untouchable. They were wrong. The first move had been made, and the rest of the game was mine to command. The following days felt like a slow, simmering storm. Cassandra and Jason continued their routine, oblivious to the fact that every word, every gesture, every glance was being catalogued in meticulous detail. I moved carefully, as if nothing had changed. But inwardly I was calculating, strategizing, preparing for the perfect moment to strike. By mid-morning, I decided to escalate the psychological pressure subtly. While Cassandra was arranging the living room, I casually mentioned an upcoming meeting with a potential investor, someone they had no idea I had been negotiating with for weeks. "It's fascinating," I said lightly, "how some people assume that the world around them is blind. Sometimes even the smallest details are noticed and remembered." Cassandra froze, her hands tightening around the vase she was adjusting. Jason stiffened beside her. The tension in the room was tangible, almost electric. They had believed they were untouchable, that my accident had rendered me powerless. The first flicker of doubt had begun to take hold. Throughout the day I continued observing them, noting every movement, every whispered conversation, every secretive glance, every hesitation. It all added to the growing mountain of evidence I was collecting. Samantha Reed had been instrumental, compiling data, tracking messages, and even confirming the subtle inconsistencies in their stories. By evening, I decided to test Cassandra further. I approached her with casual conversation, as though nothing was wrong. "Did you notice," I said lightly, "how some patterns repeat themselves? Certain behaviors, certain mistakes, they always resurface eventually." She paused, a faint tremor in her lips. Jason's jaw tightened. I let the silence linger, allowing the weight of my words to settle. The idea had been planted subtly, but unmistakably. I knew more than they thought. Later, I retreated to the study to review the security footage once again. Jason's repeated visits, the hushed phone calls, the small, carefully concealed meetings, it all confirmed what I had suspected. Cassandra had underestimated me for years. She had thought I was blind to her schemes, blind to her intentions, blind to Jason's manipulation. But I had seen everything. I had been watching, waiting, and now I was ready to move beyond observation. Around midnight, I called Ethan Brooks, my trusted friend and confidant. "Everything is progressing as planned," I said quietly. "They're beginning to notice the first cracks in their confidence. The doubt is spreading. Soon it will be impossible for them to hide anything." Ethan's voice was calm, but affirming. "Good. Keep pushing subtly. Don't reveal too much. Patience is your greatest weapon." I hung up and stared out the window, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. Cassandra and Jason remained unaware that their home had transformed into a chessboard, and every move they made was being anticipated, every mistake documented. I had learned something crucial. Revenge is not about instant gratification. It is about precision, timing, and ensuring that when the moment comes, it is inescapable. Cassandra and Jason had believed they were clever, that I was incapacitated and distracted. They had been wrong. Every laugh, every gesture, every casual remark was now a thread in the web I was weaving, a web that would ensnare them completely when the time was right. As I lay in the guest room, planning the next steps, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anticipation. The first stage of my plan, observation, evidence collection, subtle confrontation, was nearly complete. Soon, the second stage would begin, psychological exposure. I would make them question everything, make them doubt themselves, and eventually force them to confront the reality they had tried so hard to hide. And in that quiet darkness, a thought repeated in my mind. Betrayal may be hidden, but nothing stays buried forever. Cassandra and Jason had believed they were untouchable, but they had forgotten one essential truth. I was Alexander Parker, and I never missed a detail. I never ignored a sign. And I had the patience and precision to ensure that when the time came, they would feel every consequence of their choices, every lie, every deception, every betrayal. The night ended, but my resolve did not waver. Cassandra and Jason would soon learn that the quietest storms were often the deadliest, and I would make sure that when their world crumbled, it would be impossible to ignore, impossible to deny, and unforgettable. The following morning I woke with a sharper focus than ever. Cassandra and Jason were still pretending, still moving through the house as if nothing had changed. But I had already started tipping the scales. They didn't know it yet, but their lives were about to unravel, quietly, meticulously, and in ways they could never have anticipated. I decided the first aggressive move would be subtle, yet impossible to ignore. I left a file casually on the coffee table, a document that appeared to be a routine business report. But inside were carefully compiled details of Jason's repeated intrusions, his calls, and the trail of deceit Cassandra had left behind. I knew she would see it. I knew Jason would glance at it. And I knew the seeds of panic would begin to take root. As expected, Cassandra noticed it within minutes. Her hand hovered over the document before quickly withdrawing, pretending to be uninterested. Jason, too, cast a nervous glance in my direction. That small moment of hesitation, the first crack in their confidence, was exactly what I had wanted. Later in the day, I approached Cassandra casually in the kitchen. "You know," I said lightly, "it's fascinating how people believe their secrets are safe. But the world has a way of revealing everything." Eventually, her lips trembled and she avoided my gaze. Jason's foot tapped nervously on the floor behind her. The tension in the room was palpable. I let my words linger, giving them the weight they deserved. Subtlety was key. Too much too soon would raise alarms. By evening, I implemented the next stage of my plan. I sent discreet messages to Samantha Reed, requesting an even more thorough compilation of all digital evidence. Hidden emails, messages, and photos. I wanted a record so precise, so undeniable, that when the time came, Cassandra and Jason would have no defense, no denial, and no escape. That night, I called Ethan Brooks once again. "They're beginning to sense it," I said, my voice calm, but edged with intensity. The hesitation, the nervous glances. "They're starting to realize I'm aware. The next step must be strategic, something that makes them question everything they've taken for granted." Ethan's voice was reassuring. "Perfect. Keep pressing subtly. Don't reveal the full hand yet. Let the fear grow naturally. They'll expose themselves before you even make a move." With his advice in mind, I spent the rest of the night observing and noting their patterns. Cassandra and Jason were unaware that their every move, every whispered conversation, every interaction was being logged and calculated. They thought I was still weak, still recovering, still oblivious. The reality was the exact opposite. By midnight, I had begun planting additional subtle hints throughout the house. A misplaced note, a casually referenced security camera, a comment about digital monitoring. They were small, almost invisible, but each planted a growing sense of unease. Cassandra flinched when she noticed the camera. Jason's hand hesitated when reaching for a message, and I quietly noted every reaction. I realized then that revenge was no longer about immediate gratification. It was about control, precision, and timing. Every move I made, every word I spoke, every action I took was calculated to make them feel the slow tightening of the net I had woven around them. As I lay in the guest room that night, my mind raced with possibilities. Cassandra and Jason had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated me. They had assumed that my injury and silence were signs of weakness. But I had been watching. I had been planning. And now, the first phase of my plan, observation, evidence collection, subtle confrontation, was complete. The next phase, the phase that would make them truly realize the consequences of their actions, was about to begin. A quiet smile crossed my face. The storm was far from over, and Cassandra and Jason would soon learn that patience, precision, and control could be far more terrifying than immediate rage. And when the moment of revelation came, it would be unforgettable. The next morning, the house felt different. Cassandra and Jason moved through it with a forced normalcy, unaware that the walls themselves were bearing witness to their deception. I'd escalated the subtle confrontations, planted evidence, and ensured that their sense of security was fragile. Today I decided the next phase would begin, the phase that would leave them questioning everything they believed they controlled. I started by casually inviting a supposed business partner over, someone they didn't know, someone who would unknowingly play a role in the unraveling. The invitation was vague, a mere suggestion of a discussion about potential investments. I knew Cassandra would perceive it as routine. Jason would assume it was trivial, perfect. While waiting, I meticulously prepared the living room, arranging small documents and digital evidence where they might catch Cassandra's eye. It was all designed to make her question herself, to make her doubt the safety of her secrets. When the guest arrived, a legitimate associate of mine, though completely unaware of the drama unfolding, the stage was set. I led them through a casual tour of the house, ensuring that Cassandra and Jason observed me in control, confident, and fully composed. "You know," I said lightly to Cassandra, "sometimes people forget how visible they really are. Even the smallest actions can be noticed and remembered." Her hands faltered as she adjusted the curtains. Jason's foot tapped nervously against the floor. I let the moment linger, allowing the tension to build, savoring their unspoken panic. After the guest departed, I retreated to the study to review Samantha Reed's latest findings. The compiled evidence was staggering. Messages, videos, photos, and documented movements that mapped out the entirety of Cassandra and Jason's betrayal. I realized then that the power had shifted completely. The once invisible observer was now in full command, holding in my hands the very proof that would shatter their illusion of control. By evening, I decided to drop the first direct hint. While Cassandra prepared a simple dinner, I mentioned casually, "Funny how some patterns never change. People leave traces they don't even realize." Eventually, everything comes to light. Her eyes widened. Jason shifted uncomfortably behind her. The subtle reminder of surveillance, documentation, and careful observation had begun to take its toll. I smiled inwardly. They were starting to realize slowly but surely that their actions were no longer hidden. Later that night, I called Ethan Brooks. "It's working," I said quietly. "They're starting to see the first cracks. The panic, the doubt, it's subtle, but it's there. The next phase will ensure they can't ignore the truth." Ethan's voice was calm, but approving. "Exactly. Keep building. Let the fear grow naturally. They'll unravel before you even make the final move." As I hung up, I walked quietly through the living room, observing Cassandra and Jason as they prepared for bed. Their movements were careful, deliberate, but tense. Every step, every glance, every whispered word confirmed that my plan was working. They believed they were clever, that I was weak, that I wouldn't notice. They were wrong. Every detail, every betrayal, every misstep had been catalogued and stored for the perfect moment. Before resting for the night, I thought about the upcoming days. I would continue subtle confrontations, planting seeds of doubt and fear. I would make them question every choice, every relationship, every assumption they held. And when the time was right, I would strike decisively, revealing everything, the betrayal, the lies, the evidence, all in a way that they could never deny or escape. Cassandra and Jason had no idea that the invisible husband, the supposedly incapacitated man, was now fully aware, fully prepared, and fully in control. The storm I had been quietly building was approaching, and soon the consequences of their choices would be unavoidable. And as I lay in the guest room that night, I smiled faintly. Revenge, I realized, was not just about anger. It was about precision, timing, and control. And when the revelation came, it would be unforgettable, irreversible, and entirely deserved. The following morning, the tension in the house was palpable. Cassandra and Jason moved carefully, their smiles forced, their conversations measured. They had begun to sense that something was off, that the quiet husband they had underestimated was no longer passive. Every glance I cast their way carried weight. Every word I spoke was deliberate. I began the day by reviewing the evidence one final time. The photos, the messages, the security footage, it all confirmed what I already knew. The truth was undeniable, and the stage was perfectly set. Samantha Reed had compiled everything into a format that would leave no room for excuses. The anticipation was intoxicating. During breakfast, I dropped a subtle comment. "It's fascinating," I said casually, "how some people assume their actions are invisible, but even the smallest details always surface." Eventually, Cassandra froze mid-sip. Jason stiffened beside her. Their reactions were exactly what I wanted. The seed of doubt had grown into visible fear, a tremor in their otherwise confident demeanor. I let the silence linger, savoring the tension. By noon, I enacted the next step. I casually mentioned an upcoming gathering of business associates and invited them over, knowing that Cassandra and Jason would interpret it as routine. Yet the truth was, this meeting would expose everything. The associates were unaware of the drama unfolding. They were witnesses to the controlled, composed man Alexander had become, and to the subtle unraveling of Cassandra and Jason's deception. As the afternoon progressed, I continued planting psychological cues, notes casually placed in rooms, references to monitoring systems, and indirect hints about my knowledge of Jason's intrusions all worked to heighten their anxiety. Cassandra's hands trembled more frequently, and Jason's foot tapped relentlessly against the floor. Their veneer of control was cracking, and I could almost taste the satisfaction. Later, I took a quiet moment in the study, reviewing Samantha Reed's latest findings. Every piece of evidence was now organized, labeled, and ready. Soon it would be impossible for them to deny their betrayal. The patience, the strategy, the subtle manipulations, all would culminate in a revelation that would leave them completely unprepared. By evening, I initiated a more confrontational approach without fully revealing the proof. While Cassandra prepared dinner, I casually mentioned a conversation Jason had thought was private. "Funny," I said lightly, "how people assume that what's said in whispers remains secret, but often whispers are the loudest things of all." Her hand froze mid-motion. Jason's jaw tightened visibly. The room was charged with tension. Every word, every gesture, every glance now carried a weight they could no longer ignore. The fear and realization had begun to set in. They were losing control, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. As night fell, I contacted Ethan Brooks. "They're starting to feel it," I said quietly. "The tension, the anxiety, it's palpable. Soon the unraveling will begin, and they won't know what hit them." Ethan's voice was approving. "Good, timing is everything. Let them crumble under their own realization. The final reveal will be inevitable." I ended the call and quietly walked through the living room, observing Cassandra and Jason as they moved through the space with caution. Their every step was weighed, every glance calculated. They thought they were clever, that their secrets were safe. But the reality was clear. The husband they had underestimated was now fully aware, fully prepared and fully in control. Before retiring for the night, I reflected on the journey so far. Observation, evidence collection, subtle manipulation, and psychological pressure had brought me here. The next steps would be decisive. Cassandra and Jason would soon confront the consequences of their choices, and there would be no escape, no excuses, and no reconciliation possible. A quiet smile crossed my face. The storm I had meticulously crafted was approaching its peak, and when the moment of revelation came, Cassandra and Jason would understand that the quietest, most patient man could exact the most unforgettable justice. I had waited for this moment for weeks. Every observation, every piece of evidence, every subtle psychological nudge had led to this night. Cassandra and Jason thought they were clever, that they could manipulate, deceive and control without consequences. But tonight, everything would change. It began simply. I called them into the living room under the guise of discussing a routine matter. Their faces were cautious, suspicious, and tense. The air was thick with anticipation, but they had no idea how meticulously I had orchestrated everything. "Sit down," I said calmly. "There's something I think you both need to understand." Jason's fingers drummed nervously on the armrest. Cassandra's gaze flickered between me and the floor, avoiding direct eye contact. I smiled slightly, letting the silence do the first part of my work. I opened a laptop I had placed on the table. On the screen were the compiled messages, emails, hidden phone recordings, and security footage. I had even arranged timestamps to show every lie, every secret meeting, every betrayal. "You've treated me as if I were invisible, as if my feelings, my time, my efforts didn't matter," I began, my voice calm but firm. "You assumed that I wouldn't notice your games, but I did. I saw everything. I recorded everything. And tonight, you will see what I've seen all along." Cassandra gasped, and Jason's jaw tightened. They had underestimated me in every way. I played the first clip. It was Jason on the phone, whispering about a plan Cassandra had carefully concealed from me. Their faces went pale as they realized the proof was undeniable. "Everything you tried to hide, everything you thought was safe," I continued, "has been documented. Every action, every betrayal, every word. You can't erase it, and now you will face the truth." As more clips and messages played, the room filled with tension. Cassandra tried to protest. Jason attempted excuses, but I stayed calm. My calmness amplified the weight of their guilt, their panic, their helplessness. When the final video ended, a recording of Cassandra admitting her plans and Jason confirming every detail, they were silent. Shock, disbelief, and fear swirled on their faces. I'd given them enough time to see the evidence, to process the reality, and now the full impact hit. "This," I said quietly, "is what happens when trust is broken. When betrayal is chosen over love, when lies are preferred over honesty. You thought I was weak. You thought I wouldn't act. But the truth is, I was always one step ahead." Cassandra covered her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jason slumped back into the couch, defeated. It was the first moment in years that they were completely powerless. I leaned back, letting the silence fill the room. Revenge, I realized, isn't about rage. It's about precision, timing, and impact. They would never forget this night, and the lesson would remain with them forever. Deceit has consequences, and the one you underestimate can change everything. And as I closed the laptop, I addressed the camera, the viewers of Mine Sweet Revenge. Friends, sometimes life puts us in situations where patience and strategy matter more than immediate action. Today's story is proof that even the quietest person can reclaim control, expose the truth, and ensure justice is served. Thank you for watching, and remember, respect, honesty, and awareness are priceless. Before you go, a small request. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Mine Sweet Revenge for more real-life inspired revenge stories. Remember this: betrayal may hide in plain sight, but truth always finds a way. And when patience meets precision, revenge is inevitable.